Somehow, the same species that invented Wi-Fi once thought lead paint was a learning tool. 1. The radioactive chemistry set. In the 1950s, America decided the best way to teach kids about science was to hand them uranium. Literally. The Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab, sold in toy aisles nationwide, came with 4 samples of real radioactive material and a Geiger counter, because nothing says fun after school like mild radiation exposure. The box encouraged kids to experiment freely, which is corporate code for "we didn't think this through." Parents loved it until someone realized the word glow shouldn't describe your child. The toy was quickly pulled from shelves, proving once again that the only element adults consistently underestimate is human stupidity. 2. The electric belt of brilliance. Back in the early 1900s, some genius decided intelligence could be boosted through mild electrocution. Enter the Dr. Scott's electric belt, a wearable contraption that promised to improve focus, memory, and weirdly, male vitality. It was basically a portable taser that called itself educational. Men proudly wore these buzzing torture belts while claiming they could now think faster, though most just learned that voltage and anatomy are not study partners. By the time medical boards caught on, thousands had already zapped themselves into what we can only describe as Darwinian enlightenment. 3. Phrenology. Reading minds, one skull. Bump at a time before psychology, people genuinely believed you could measure intelligence by fondling someone's head. Phrenology, the science of reading skull bumps, swept through 19th century classrooms as a revolutionary learning method. Teachers would literally feel students' heads to map their talents. Imagine getting graded not for homework, but for your forehead texture. Phrenologists published charts proving everything from honesty to musical ability lived somewhere between your ears and your hairline. It wasn't until decades later that science admitted the only thing phrenology accurately measured was the human capacity for confident nonsense. 4. The cigarette math lesson. In the 1940s, cigarette companies decided that nicotine and numbers made a perfect educational combo. Brands like Camel and Lucky Strike actually published math and chemistry lesson plans for schools, complete with charming equations like how many puffs in a pack and the science of smooth burning. Teachers were given glossy posters showing the clean combustion of tobacco, while kids got free branded rulers and health fact pamphlets claiming cigarettes help digestion. Because nothing screams STEM education like a Marlboro man explaining airflow dynamics. By the 1950s, an entire generation could calculate tar content before they could balance a checkbook. Eventually, schools realized that teaching combustion science via lung damage wasn't ideal. The campaigns vanished overnight, leaving behind the glorious irony that America once thought math and marketing both required smoke breaks. 5. The educational baby cage. During the 1930s, urban parents believed that fresh air was vital for child development. Sensible enough until someone invented the baby cage. It was exactly what it sounds like, a metal cage bolted outside apartment windows, several stories up, where infants were left to soak up nature. Magazines praised it as an educational innovation in child health, calling it a playpen of the future, because nothing says responsible learning environment like dangling your kid over a sidewalk. Neighbors watched in horror while parents congratulated themselves on early science exposure, mainly to gravity. By the 1950s, cities quietly banned the practice, proving that maybe the only lesson learned was how to terrify pedestrians. 6. The color psychology classroom. In the 1970s, some schools decided students could learn better if the classroom walls stimulated the right brain waves. So they painted everything pink, desks, lockers, even chalkboards, based on a pseudoscientific theory that pink reduced aggression and boosted focus. The result? Students became dizzy, teachers developed headaches, and janitors reported unholy Pepto-Bismol flashbacks. Still, administrators called it a triumph of educational psychology, insisting grades were up because pink encouraged creative surrender. Eventually, test scores plummeted, and the experiment was quietly covered over, literally, with beige paint, proving once again that no color can hide bad science. 7. The duck and cover curriculum. In the 1950s, American schools turned nuclear panic into a pop quiz. Every student learned safety through cheerful animated films starring Bert the Turtle, who taught them to duck and cover under their desks in case of an atomic blast. Yes, teachers genuinely told children that a wooden desk could save them from a mushroom cloud. Schools even held drills complete with air raid sirens, turning math class into a live-action apocalypse rehearsal. Kids practiced hiding from invisible radiation like it was a game of hide-and-seek with God. Decades later, psychologists realized the drills didn't actually save lives. They just created generations who flinched every time a bell rang. The only explosion they were truly prepared for was the pop quiz on Tuesday. 8. The Museum of Morality. In the late 1800s, Victorian educators decided the best way to teach children virtue was through terror. Traveling museums of morality toured schools, displaying wax figures of sinners suffering various grisly fates, drunkards melting, thieves in eternal flames, gossipers with literal forked tongues. Teachers called it visual learning. Parents called it nightmare fuel. Children learned exactly one lesson: morality apparently required trauma. Some schools even encouraged students to reflect on their sins by writing essays about which wax corpse resembled them most. The exhibit ended after several fainting incidents and one particularly pious boy trying to exorcise a mannequin. It was replaced with something less horrifying: arithmetic. 9. The baby simulator doll disaster. In the 1990s, schools embraced a revolutionary tool for teaching responsibility: the baby think-it-over doll. It cried at random hours, demanded feeding, and recorded every moment of neglect. It was meant to scare teens out of early parenthood. Instead, it created chaos. Students hurled them out windows, stuffed them in lockers, or bribed siblings to babysit. Some even hacked the internal timers to stop the crying, earning extra credit for creative problem-solving. Teachers realized too late that they'd invented the world's most annoying alarm clock with a built-in guilt trip. Studies later confirmed the program didn't reduce teen pregnancies. It only increased resentment toward dolls. Education, once again, learned that empathy can't be programmed by batteries and screaming plastic. 10. The animal dissection field trip. In the 1960s, American schools believed the best way to teach biology was through full-contact science. Forget diagrams, students were handed scalpels and frogs like it was some kind of amphibian autopsy boot camp. Some schools even upgraded to more engaging specimens: fetal pigs, cow eyes, or the occasional cat. Teachers proudly called it hands-on learning. Parents called it a crime scene in progress. The smell of formaldehyde haunted every hallway, while traumatized kids quietly vowed never to become doctors. One teacher famously bragged that no student leaves my class without understanding anatomy, which was technically true because they all had nightmares about it for decades. Eventually, digital simulations replaced real organs, saving thousands of animals and even more childhoods from therapy bills. In 11. The beauty pageant for brains. In the 1950s, some schools hosted scholastic charm contests, where girls were graded not only on their spelling but on their posture, poise, and hair hygiene. It was basically Miss America with algebra. Teachers earnestly told girls that confidence and good looks were part of being well-educated. Boys, meanwhile, got trophies for remembering state capitals and not slouching. Winning meant a sash that read "most studious and stylish." Losing meant you learned that education had a dress code. The contests died off in the 1970s after one girl publicly asked if good grammar made her prettier. Spoiler, it did, but only because sarcasm never goes out of style. 12. The moral hygiene films. Between the 1940s and 1970s, schools screened black and white educational films about topics too awkward for teachers to explain. Titles like Mind Your Manners, Dating Do's and Don'ts, and So You Think You're Ready for Marriage taught kids that hand-holding could destroy your future. Each film featured painfully polite teens who made eye contact like it was a federal offense. The lessons were clear: don't drink, don't kiss, and for the love of God, don't have emotions before graduation. They were meant to teach morality, but mostly taught paranoia. Some were so absurd that students mocked them mercilessly, proving that nothing educates quite like unintentional comedy. 13. The cocaine toothache drops. Lesson plan. Before the FDA existed, educational medicine was basically Wild West pharmacology. In the late 1800s, teachers and parents alike swore by Lloyd's cocaine toothache drops, a miracle cure advertised for teething children. The instructions? Apply liberally for immediate relief. Immediate, yes. Safe, absolutely not. Doctors soon realized the nation had turned its toddlers into tiny Victorian addicts. But in the spirit of learning by experience, companies defended the product as teaching children the power of modern science. Schools quietly stopped recommending it once they realized the kids were learning a bit too much about energy management and confidence. Today, it stands as proof that not every lesson needs a lab coat, especially one that includes a line of powder. 14. The classroom smoking experiment. In the 1930s, schools decided science should look more like a jazz club. Some teachers conducted controlled smoking demonstrations to show students the effects of combustion and air quality. They'd light cigarettes at the front of class, collect the smoke in jars, and label it educational gas. Students were invited to observe lung discoloration using crude filters, basically watching cotton balls turn brown. A few schools even allowed older students to test the experiment themselves because apparently the scientific method required first-hand coughing. It was marketed as chemistry for the modern age until one principal realized half his lab smelled like a speakeasy. The experiment stopped abruptly, replaced by a new lesson plan. Why we don't light things on fire indoors. 15. The typing class torture symphony. In the 1980s, typing class was the high school equivalent of boot camp, minus the glory, plus the screeching of 50 electric typewriters. Teachers treated words per minute like Olympic scores. If you hit less than 40, you weren't just slow. You were a national disappointment. One missed semicolon, and you'd get the legendary side-eye of shame. The room echoed with the sound of future carpal tunnel diagnoses. Some teachers even blindfolded students for focus training, turning classrooms into chaotic percussion concerts. When computers finally arrived, students rejoiced, until they met the horrors of Clippy, Microsoft Word's passive-aggressive paperclip. The moral? Technology evolves, but humiliation by typo is eternal. 16. The good posture movement. In the 1920s, America briefly decided that posture was the key to intelligence. Schools launched national good posture clubs, where children lined up for spine inspections. Teachers marched down rows with rulers, poking anyone who slouched like they were correcting moral failure. Some schools even awarded gold stars for exemplary vertebral discipline. Bad posture, they claimed, led to poor thinking, bad manners, and, somehow, social decline. Students practiced balancing books on their heads to align the body with virtue. It looked elegant until the book started falling like divine punishment. The movement eventually collapsed under the weight of its own absurdity, proving that straight spines don't always equal straight thinking. 17. The educational asbestos era. Once upon a time, the word asbestos meant progress. In the mid-20th century, schools lined ceilings, walls, and even art supplies with the miracle mineral. Cheap, fireproof, and, as it turned out, toxic. Teachers proudly demonstrated how it protected learning environments, often waving chunks of the stuff during safety lessons. Kids made science projects from it, molding models of volcanoes that genuinely smoked because, well, everything around them was basically flammable poison. For decades, no one questioned why every classroom smelled faintly like a mechanic's garage. When scientists finally confirmed asbestos caused lung disease, school boards panicked, sealing hallways like biohazard labs. The irony? The very material that was supposed to protect young minds ended up teaching the most expensive lesson in public health history. 18. The classroom corpse. In the late 1800s, medical schools had a grim interpretation of hands-on learning. Some rural institutions couldn't afford proper anatomical models, so they used actual cadavers, often donated by hospitals in the loosest sense of the word. Students were told it was an honor to study the mysteries of life, while the mysteries mostly involved guessing where the bodies came from. Some schools couldn't even refrigerate them, leading to what can only be described as semester-long science projects in decomposition. Professors treated the smell as an educational challenge. Decades later, when proper synthetic models arrived, alumni fondly recalled their time studying anatomy the old-fashioned way, with one eye closed and a cloth over their nose. It's proof that medical education didn't just teach biology, it taught survival instincts. 19. The learn-to-swim brick drill. In the 1950s, physical education teachers thought drowning prevention was best learned by almost drowning. The brick drill required students to dive into the deep end, retrieve a 10-pound brick, and swim it back to safety. Teachers called it building character. Students called it state-sponsored trauma. If you failed, you didn't just lose points. You got yelled at for lacking moral buoyancy. Some classes even held competitions to see who could carry the brick the longest, turning gym class into a low-budget Navy SEAL obstacle course. Ironically, the drill did make better swimmers, mostly out of fear. After too many panic attacks and one very angry parent, schools finally replaced bricks with foam floats. Character, it seemed, could survive without concrete. 20. The silent lunchroom experiment. In the 1970s, a few experimental schools decided that conversation during lunch was distracting to digestion. So they introduced the silent lunch policy, where hundreds of kids had to eat in total silence under the watchful gaze of cafeteria monitors. Posters on the wall read, "Chew quietly, think deeply." Teachers claimed it improved mindfulness. Students called it dystopia with tater tots. Some tried to rebel by communicating through elaborate hand gestures or synchronized spoon clinks, which only led to stricter rules, like no rhythmic noises. Eventually, parents revolted after realizing their kids were coming home and whispering at dinner out of habit. The policy was quietly dropped, and noise returned to the lunchroom like music after censorship. Turns out, the only thing less digestible than cafeteria pizza was enforced peace and quiet. 21. The Museum of Oddities on Wheels. In the 1920s, traveling education wagons roamed rural America, bringing knowledge to small towns that didn't have libraries. Sounds noble, until you see what they carried. These wagons were filled with jars of preserved animal organs, mislabeled fossils, and one unfortunate educational mummy made of papier-mâché and horsehair. Children were told it was an ancient pharaoh. It was probably someone's discarded Halloween decoration. Lecturers preached science, history, and morality while selling miracle tonics in the back. It was the ultimate mashup of TED Talk and snake oil sales pitch. Parents thought their kids were getting Harvard-level education on wheels. In reality, they were staring into a jar labeled two-headed snake that looked suspiciously like two lizards glued together. When the Department of Education finally inspected one of these wagons, the report simply read, "Educational value, ambiguous." 22. The Good Citizen Behavior Report Card. During the 1940s, schools wanted to teach morality alongside math, so they created character report cards. Instead of grades, students got scored on virtues like honesty, obedience, and patriotic enthusiasm. Teachers actually marked how well kids saluted the flag or kept their desks tidy for democracy. One category was cheerfulness under authority, which sounds less like a lesson plan and more like an FBI interview question. Students who scored low were publicly shamed during assemblies, learning the valuable lesson that personality too could fail algebra. Eventually, psychologists stepped in and called the system educational authoritarianism. Schools replaced it with the modern behavior chart, proving we never really stopped grading people. We just got better at pretending it's about growth. 23. The electroshock learning helmet. In the 1960s, an inventor genuinely tried to revolutionize learning through brain stimulation. His masterpiece, the cerebral focus enhancer, looked like a bicycle helmet wired to a car battery. It promised instant memory retention by sending mild electric pulses into the scalp. Several experimental schools actually tried it. Students wore the helmets during spelling tests while teachers flipped switches like they were launching NASA rockets. The inventor claimed it supercharged learning pathways. What it really did was supercharge headaches and set a few hairstyles on fire. After one dramatic short-circuit incident that turned a student into a temporary static balloon, the experiment was banned. Yet, in true educational fashion, the inventor declared the trial a shocking success. History quietly filed this one under science projects that should have been a no. Humanity once taught kids with radiation, electricity, and fear. And somehow, we still wonder why everyone needs therapy.